Hello everybody, welcome back. I should be making how to play Jingle Bells videos right now to milk their algorithm, but I thought I would show you something useful instead. I think it makes for a better Christmas present. And so today I want to share with you 3 uses we can make of this very strange and special chord called the diminished seventh chord. Now this is a complex harmonically and theoretically chord. I touched upon it, of course, in my 9-hour long video of every single guitar chord out there. I'll link it above for you to check out later when you have time. And the reason we want to use this chord is that no matter your style and no matter the level, it will really add up a lot of dimension to your chord progressions and therefore to the possibilities of your melodic playing as well. Without getting too deep into the theory of this chord, let's just go over it really quickly. The diminished seventh chord is based on a diminished triad. The diminished triad is made up of a root, a minor third, and a diminished fifth. This is a diatonic triad, so we find it in the major and minor scales. But when we add a diminished seventh on top of it, then it becomes non-diatonic, so we will not find this chord in our regular major, minor, and modal sounds. The diminished seventh is 1/2 step lower than a minor seventh. So in the key of C, we'll have our root C, our minor third E flat, our diminished fifth G flat, and our diminished seventh B double flat, also known as A. But we will call it B double flat because it's a seventh, and the seventh of C has to be a B. So right now we have these 4 notes: C, E flat, G flat, B double flat. And if you notice, there's a tritone between the C and the G flat. If you know a little bit about theory, you know how important tritones are when it comes time to resolve to the 1. But there's also another tritone between the E flat and the B double flat. So it's a very rich chord as far as tension goes. It really wants to go somewhere else, and that's what we're going to exploit for these 3 applications. Another curious thing about this chord is that because the notes are all at the same distance from one another, check it out, if I start on the 3rd fret on C, I go up to the 6th, which is 3 frets higher for the minor third, 3 more frets to the G flat, which is the diminished fifth, 3 more frets to the B double flat, which is the diminished seventh, and then 3 more frets again to get back to the root. All the notes are at the same exact distance from one another, which means that when I play the chord, each of these notes could be the root of the chord. So we can look at this as a C diminished seventh, but also as a G flat diminished seventh, or as a B double flat or A diminished seventh, or an E flat diminished seventh. They're all roots. And another consequence of this is that if I repeat the same chord every 3 frets or every minor third, I get an inversion of the chord, so the same chord starting from a different note, but still all the notes are the same. Let's just check it out one time really quickly. I go C, G flat, A, B flat. If I move 3 frets down, I have A, E flat, G flat, C, same notes. This only happens with very, very few chords. They're called symmetrical chords, and all the notes count as basically the root. One final corollary to all this: if I start from C, I can only play 2 more diminished seventh chords, these 2, before I repeat again. So these next 3 are the same as these. So there really are only 3 diminished seventh chords. Anyway, enough of the theory, let's look at some applications. But wait, before we do that, let me show you 3 fingerings for this chord, alright, so we can use it throughout the video. First up is this one. I'll play it all in the key of C. Here's a diagram for you. Another one I want you to know is this one, again in the key of C. Okay, so now the root is on the 5th. And finally one with the root on the 4th string, the one we saw earlier. So learn these really quickly and then let's continue. So the first use for this chord that you should get familiar with is to use it as the substitution for a 5 chord in a key. In the key of C major, a very common resolution to C comes from the 5 chord, the G, or G7 to C, It's a very common sound, it's a very common cadence. It sounds great, but one more interesting way of doing it is to actually use a diminished seventh chord that's 1/2 step higher than the 5 chord. So if the 5 chord is G to C, we can use G sharp diminished seventh to C. It sounds very similar because G sharp diminished seventh is really the same as G seventh with the root raised a 1/2 step. That's all there is to it. But it gives you an extra pull towards the root. And the reason is that when we were playing G to C, C already has a G as the 5th. Okay, but when I use G sharp diminished seventh, that G sharp now has a movement, a downward movement of a 1/2 step, so it's one more note that wants to go to C. So it's a great sound, very discreet. Some people won't even notice it as you resolve. For example, if you do D minor 7th, G 7th, C. We can change that to D minor 7th, G sharp diminished 7th. Very similar, but it has a bit of an extra edge. It makes it sound more sophisticated, more interesting. So certainly put this under your belt and let's continue. A second and very useful application of the diminished chord is as a chromatic bridge, especially to minor diatonic chords. What does this mean? Well, it's very simple. Let's say I have a very simple progression, again in the key of C. I'm going from C major to D minor, nothing else. I go 1 to D minor. We can use the diminished seventh chord as a chromatic bridge in between these two chords. So I still have my C major, but I can now use C sharp diminished seventh into the minor of D. I can also continue doing it, so from D to D sharp diminished to E, right? So all together we go like this. Very beautiful. I can work my way back to D. Now, if I go to C major, it's not the same thing. So it really works well when you go chromatically to a minor chord. And the third use of this chord I want to share with you is as a prolongation of a given chord. What does that mean? Well, sometimes we are playing or vamping over a single chord. This happens very often even in pop and rock solos, where maybe the rhythm for the solo section is just a single held chord. It happens a lot in jazz, of course. It happens in classical music. And one old school solution for this, since the times of classical music, was to go from the 1, right, jump into the 5 for a little section very quickly and then move back to the 5. Not long enough to establish the 5 as its own chord, but it's really just a prolongation of the 1. But you still look at it as if you were on the 1. Well, to sound a bit more sophisticated, you can do it by using the diminished seventh chord of the same root as the chord you're vamping on. What does this mean? Well, if my vamp, for example, for a solo is just playing a C major chord, a C major 7, and you're improvising over this, if you want to add some spice to it, you can just alternate between C major and C diminished seventh. You can use it as shorter intervals, or longer. One thing you have to be mindful of is that this chord, of course, has a bunch of notes that are not in the scale. Well, 2 of them, these 2. And so you might run into some issues if you're just improvising over both chords with the same C major scale. But if you keep it short enough, the tension in the chord will be kind of self-sufficient. So it's accepted that there's a little tension, even if you're jamming with a regular scale. If you try it and it doesn't sound too good, keep playing and you should be able to work it out. If you, of course, know a lot about music theory, then you'll be able to know exactly what notes to change or to ignore or to avoid as you improvise. But Everybody can do this, as long as you build a little bit of an ear for it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this and find it useful. Please do like, subscribe, especially comment. I love reading your comments. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's all kinds of links below. If you're buying stuff for Christmas and maybe you want to check out my affiliate links, of course, they don't cost you anything, but it will help me make more of these videos. Thank you so much as always for being there, and I'll see you very soon.